Good morning, Unity of the West Side. We're going to do a little meditation before, and you might recognize this meditation because it's the same one I did last week. Because it touched everybody so much that I really kind of thought, let's do that again. So I invite you to relax in your seat, put your feet down on the floor, cast your eyes downward, and close your eyes if you feel compelled. Just relax. You're in this safe sanctuary, this safe place where God is. And there is not a spot where God is not. In Unity, sometimes we're accused of spiritually bypassing things. And this meditation really speaks to some of the things that we all go through. Blessed are we who lose sleep over what troubles us, whose worries keep us watching the clock tick by, who have no energy to do anything but fret. The kingdom of God is here and now. Blessed are we, drowning in grief, when wave after wave crashes over us, who start to feel okay, and then something reminds us of what we've lost, and we're pulled under once again. God's promise is to comfort us. Blessed are we who are silenced, who are afraid to speak up, who are forgotten and left out, who feel small, as though our work, our presence, our lives don't matter. The whole world is ours. Blessed are we, starving for justice, when the world around us feels so unfair that we could scream, but no one is listening. No one seems to care. May justice flow like a river. Blessed are we when someone hurts us, when we're offended, and we don't return insults with insults. Instead, we forgive, recognizing the number of times that we've needed to be forgiven. Blessed are we when we strip away all the extra, when we see the world as it really is, broken and tender and fragile and beautiful. These are the same eyes that God sees everything too. Blessed are we who walk the hard road, the winding one, that doesn't opt for the shortcut of rage or resentment or unkind words, that doesn't pave over with trite niceties, but walks towards peacemaking. Blessed are we when facing hardships of all sorts. Blessed Blessed are we, working to usher in God's kingdom of love, even when it's hard. Blessed are we, the imperfect and don't have it all together, God's beloved. God's beloved. God's beloved. Let's take those words into a moment of silence. God's beloved. God's beloved. God's beloved. As we come back to the here and the now, we come back knowing that we are beloved of the One Most High. Knowing that oneness that flows between us and spirit, between us and universal consciousness, between us and God. So as we come back to the here and the now, we gently open our eyes. I love it when someone indulges me in my weird musical requests. When I said I wanted to do this talk, he was like, yeah. So you say you want a revolution. Today, the title of my talk is Trigger is Not Just a Horse. And there's the good old Trigger with Roy Rogers aboard. I found a black and white and a color one, so you could see what a beautiful poem he was. I want to do a preemptive warning. Today's talk might make you a little uncomfortable. But when it does, I want you to remember last week when you all loved the talk. Everybody came back to me last week, what a great talk. Because I took questions and we kind of did it by flying by the seat of our pants, and everybody loved that. So just remember last week, if it makes you uncomfortable, my friends, that is in my job description. I'm here to facilitate and encourage your human and your spiritual growth. I'm here to cheerlead you and coach you on areas of life that are not easy. For that reason, I did that same meditation, because it seemed to speak to so many of us, not just you guys, me too. And I think I know why. Because in unity, we're always accused of spiritually bypassing the hard stuff. We say one love and divine order, and we do that with a smile. And I've learned this. Divine order sometimes looks like the apocalypse to me. And yes, I mean now. And one love is a great Bob Marley song, but it doesn't begin to touch me when I'm triggered. Spiritual and emotional maturity is what's needed when we're triggered. So first of all, we want to identify what triggers are. Trigger is often used to mean something that brings on or worsens symptoms, and this often happens to people with a history of trauma or who are recovering from mental illness, self-harm, addiction, eating disorders, also just being human. When someone has a history of any of these issues, especially the just being human part, as I clearly am, being unexpectedly exposed to imagery or content that deals with that history can cause harm or possibly relapse, or at the very least, it could cause someone to be very, very, very uncomfortable. Understanding and identifying and working to recognize and prevent triggers can be powerful and effective. However, we live in a human world where we don't always know when we're going to be triggered. There's several types of triggers. External triggers, think senses, sounds, sights, smells, textures that elicit a response based on past experience. An example is, when I smell cinnamon, I think of my grandma. And I'm right there in my grief place, having lost my grandma. Internal triggers are strong feelings that arise based on past experiences. Example, when I have to make a doctor's appointment after a negative medical experience, that can trigger some fear. Trauma triggers are strong feelings that arise based on past trauma. Here's an example of my trauma. I have a dog named John Henry who goes absolutely crazy when there's fireworks. He thinks it's the end of the world. The sound of the fireworks triggers him, and he, in fact, triggers me. My older sister's health triggers me to question my health, and so on and so on and so on. There's symptom triggers. A physical change can trigger larger mental health issues. A great example is if you go out with me and I'm rude to the waiter or waitress. It usually means my sugar's low. My rudeness is a physical symptom. After experience a trigger, a person can have big and negative and overwhelming and powerful, fearful feelings. And these feelings can be detrimental and are often a challenge to effectively address. After they arrive, the behavior that emerges after a trigger can range from minimal to serious thoughts of acts of violence. Someone exposed to a trigger may experience impaired judgment or awareness. So where do these triggers come from? It's funny because I was just speaking with a friend of mine, and she's a fellow minister, and she was complaining about some family members, and in fact, we're talking sisters. Now, I have sisters, so I totally understood what she was saying about her sisters. No one can treat you like your sisters, or your brother, or that close cousin, or that close friend you've had since childhood. Your siblings, believe it or not, installed a lot of your triggers. Your parents probably installed a few of your triggers, and if you're in love with somebody, they probably know all your triggers, and they might have installed a few new ones. Triggers are nothing to be afraid of, but they're important, and the reasons they're important is because they are opportunities to grow. They are opportunities to heal. Triggers are opportunities, so when you get triggered, think of my friend Trigger the horse. Trigger lived from July 4th, 1934 to July 3rd, 1965. 31 years is a long time for a horse to live. And he was a beautiful Palomino horse who came into this world. His sire was a thoroughbred, and his dam was a beautiful Palomino mare. Trigger, who you saw in so many Roy Rogers films, was a stallion who was never bred. And that's a great reason to be triggered. We live in a world where just driving to church might lead to triggers, because I drive up here on that God-loving 405. And this morning I shared with you, a guy saw me coming down the road and he still went to pull out. And it was like, hello, I'm traveling down this road, you're turning right, you know? And I do believe I called him an idiot, right? But then I said, I called him an idiot, and that's not a very nice way to be before I come to church. So I took a breath, and I let it go. I want to give you an unpopular fact. You are responsible when you're triggered. As children, lots of things happen to us that have installed our triggers, but as adults, we are responsible when we are triggered. We're responsible for knowing what our triggers are, and we're responsible for how we act when we're triggered. So when you're triggered, something comes along that makes you upset, something happens, and your reaction is not good for anyone, even for yourself, you are responsible. There may be certain political figures that you can see on your television that you don't like, and that can trigger something in you and cause you to feel angry and upset. I'm just saying, it could be either guy or the guy that's in the middle. I was saying to myself, is this the best and brightest we've got? It's a trigger, but you are responsible. I am responsible. So my question today is, can you be curious about your triggers, about where they come from and why they showed up? Can you possibly engage in difficult situations and conversations with a focus on staying neutral? What's that called? Conscious neutrality. Not trying to convince someone of your side and maintaining a positive relationship. We can learn what's triggering for those around us, and we can try to avoid causing pain. Now, this is spiritually mature, and I know that because I can think of times in my life when I knew I was triggering someone, but I did it anyway. Remember to respect an individual's right not to share or to share on their own timeline when you're helping them with their triggers. But can we be empathetic and listen without judgment? Can I be a safe place for everyone around me? Can I avoid taking another person's behavior personally and not make negative judgments about somebody's feelings or their behavior? Yes, my friends, we can do this. And we can do this by maintaining good boundaries and practicing our conscious neutrality. Boundaries help everyone be clear on expectations, which adds to our security and our predictability. Can I ask others to help me cope? So I used to have a foster son, and he came to me with severe behavioral challenges. And he would tantrum usually at night, and usually he would tantrum when he was on my very last nerve. So one time when we were having dinner the night after one of his tantrums, where my house had actually gotten destroyed and he had physically assaulted me, we were sitting across from each other and we were having dinner at Denny's. That was my favorite place to go after he would have a tantrum, because he had to look at me and I had to look at him. And he told me he was ashamed about how he acted. He wanted another way and he was looking for it. So I asked him, how could he tantrum and have it be okay with him? He said he'd like to curse me out when he was mad at me. He'd like to scream and raise his voice, and he'd like to stomp his feet. And he'd like to be really loud. So I had a choice. I could have him randomly destroy my house and assault me, or I could give in to him totally and allow him the boundaries of his own tantrum. I'll never forget the next tantrum he had. He was upset because I was making him do his homework, so it started with the cursing. He called me all kinds of names that weren't mine, and he got very loud, screaming at me. Finally, he started stamping his feet, and he looked up at me for my reaction, and I was really trying to give no reaction, but he looked like a big 2-year-old, and this kid was like 10, 11 years old at the time. I have to admit, I couldn't hold it in and I laughed. Now this could have gone either way, but he laughed too. Laughter sometimes can be a healing trigger. You know, when we talk about triggers, we have to mention self-care because I know the times when I'm most likely to be triggered are the times when I haven't done my spiritual practices, when I haven't taken very, very good care of myself. I haven't done my self-care. So in today's talk, I'd like you to search yourself this week and really search out what your triggers are. Ask Spirit why these are coming up and be open when Spirit answers you. If you know your own triggers, you may be better equipped to cope with them. So identify those triggers and ask yourself who, what, where, when, and why these triggers are there. Look for observable patterns and obvious signs of risk. Make a plan to address them the next time you're triggered by something or someone. Like when you're going home for vacation, and have a plan. Like with my foster son, maybe other people can help you plan and address your triggers, or you can help others. Try problem-focused coping. When something comes up, it's a stress in your life, confront it. There's a great song by Devo. When a problem comes along,
You must whip it.
You must whip it. We should do that song one day. Try emotional focused coping when you can eliminate or avoid a trigger. Focus on your reaction to a stressor. For example, meditation or sometimes just taking a breath can help reduce the stress and anxiety and depression that come with our triggers. I'm just saying. It's always good to have spiritual practice. When you're triggered, reality check your thoughts. Ask yourself, is this real? Is this true? Sometimes our brain lies to us based on our past. And we think something's true. Oh, that person doesn't like me. Oh no, they scowl at me every time they come. No, they don't. That's in my head. Ask yourself, is my reaction disproportionate to the trigger? Look for trigger warnings, my friends. If you see something that says there's going to be violence and violence triggers you, maybe it's time to turn the channel or turn the TV off and read something inspiring. The last thing that you can do to help yourself with triggers is to practice your self-care. Prioritizing your mental health can help build resilience against potential triggers. You can start by talking to someone such as a loved one, a friend, or a therapist. You may want to practice mindfulness, meditation, deep breathing, and journaling. Each time a person is triggered is a learning opportunity that can help us manage reactions in the future. It also helps us spiritually grow. We become more spiritually mature when we can be triggered, recognize that we're triggered, and not respond to the trigger at all. Trigger is not just a horse, my friend. Trigger is an opportunity. I am responsible for my triggers. And that's today's affirmation. I am responsible for my triggers. Oh, look. That's Mark took that picture. And peace is not when everyone agrees, it's when we can respect our disagreements and still play in the sandbox together. You say you want a revolution? Revolution starts from within, my friends. You've got a friend here. Look around. Look around at each other. This is a spiritual community that supports each other and prays for each other to our face and behind our backs. Spoiler alert, ministry is messy. The church isn't perfect. Karol, the minister, is a little crazy. We're all a little crazy. God is really good, and you are ridiculously loved and good. And say it again. Meliorism, the belief that we can contribute to positive change and improve the world through acts of love, creativity, compassion, and kindness. Spiritual maturity is our bridge over troubled waters, and our revolution is now. So this week's talk might have made you a little uncomfortable thinking about your triggers. We all like to come here and have these feel-good times. That'll come, I'll be back in 2 weeks. So my next talk is going to be a little more uplifting and positive. This one I really want to, we're all being triggered with things that are going on out there, and if it's affecting me, I always assume it's affecting all you guys too. So that's why this was really important today. I am going to be here in 2 weeks. Jane's going to do Father's Day, and then I'm going to be here the week after, and then I have earned, after 7 years as a spiritual leader here, I have earned a month's sabbatical, where I am going back to Detroit to be in the midst of my family, and so I will be gone for a whole month, but Jane and Carol Ann and Dr. Robin Owens are going to be here speaking, and Ken's going to be back. So you're going to be in good hands while I'm gone, and I'm going to come back the first part of August. So I will see you though on the 23rd. I just want to make sure everybody kind of knew that, just so that you know kind of what's coming up. I want to thank you today for letting me speak, because I think it's really important that we all spiritually mature and grow together. And I'm the first one in line. Thank you.